Hello, Paul Oliver here, and welcome to another series where we are looking at ligers, zorses, shebras, zonkies, amongst others, and a 17-inch donkey. Have you got any idea what I'm talking about? Also, the Reverend Charles Darwin and his voyage on the HMS Beagle, and why did he reintroduce the idea of evolution that had been proposed in the 6th century long before? Also, why billions of dollars were spent over the period of 100 years to save just 4 seconds. Please watch to the end, and I hope you enjoy.
Lies in the textbooks. We've covered 15 lies so far in the textbooks. Let's cover just 2 more tonight. It may take a little while on this. I'm going to go as fast as I can, and that's pretty fast, isn't it? I can talk fast. Okay, they're going to think I'm a woman when they find my jaw. They go, boy, that thing's worn out. It must be a woman. Darwin saw evolution on the Galapagos Islands. No, not true. Darwin did not see any evolution, and this is lie number 16 we're going to cover tonight. He did not see any evolution. Here's Wikipedia. Darwinism is a theory of biological evolution developed by the English naturalist Charles Darwin. Now, why does he get to be called a naturalist when his only degree was in theology? He was going to be a pastor of an Anglican church. He graduated from college, barely, to be an Anglican pastor. But now you're calling him a naturalist in Wikipedia? I thought Wikipedia was a place where you can correct it if it needs corrected. I think somebody ought to correct that. How about Reverend Charles Darwin? That's what he was. Okay. Anyway, there's another throat clearing. Stating that all species of organisms arise and develop through the natural selection of small inherited variations, now watch this carefully, that increase the individual's ability to compete, survive, and reproduce. So according to Darwin's theory, some animals have a mutation or something happens, a small inherited variation that makes them a little better than the rest. Isn't that what they're saying? Well then, in order for that to work, what would have to happen to those that don't have this improved gene? They would have to die off. See, evolution is a religion of death, not life. The inferiors have to die to make it work. That's the subtle, not-so-hidden message in this teaching. Okay? The theory of evolution, according to Live Science contributor Kerr Thon, who writes all kinds of stuff on evolution, the theory of evolution by natural selection, first formulated in Darwin's book On the Origin of Species in 1859, is the process by which organisms change over time as a result of changes in inheritable physical or behavioral traits. Changes that allow an organism to better adapt to its environment will help it survive and have more offspring. Okay, so if they have this new improved gene that makes them better adapted, again, what must happen to those that don't have it in order for this to work? They have to die, don't they? This is the not-so-hidden message behind evolution. Darwin's revolutionary theory was that new species arise naturally by a process of evolution, rather than having been created forever immutable by God. Now here's the trick, kids. They're lying to you right here. Darwin's theory was that new species, the process of evolution, new species arise naturally. Watch this. They use the word species, which I think is a reasonable word, but never clearly defined. Exactly what is a species? Okay, the Bible uses the word kind. And the Bible teaches they will always bring forth after their kind. Now, it's true there are 1,100 species of bats, but guess what? They're the same kind of animal. Guess what kind it is? A bat. Okay. So this is how they're going to trick you with that word species and clade rather than the biblical term of kind. So Darwin's theory was that new species arise naturally by a process of evolution rather than having been created forever immutable by God. Immutable means unchangeable. Did God make the species where they're unchangeable? No. He gave them incredible flexibility within that gene code. Ask any parent with more than one kid, they'll tell you they're all different. Some are taller, some are shorter, some are smarter, some are dumber, some have more hair, some have less hair. I mean, they're still the same species, they're still human, but there's a lot of variations within every species. So Darwin's theory was fighting against something that didn't need to fight against. They made up an idea that God said the species are immutable. So somebody started teaching, if there's 1,100 species of bats, then God must have made 1,100 species of bats. And if there's 8 species of bears in the world, then God must have made 8 species of bears. That's what they're teaching. That's what they're fighting against. Now, that would be reasonable to fight against. If there are 8 species of bears, I think you could all say they're the same kind, called a bear. And we got a display in the Science Center about that. You fixed that up today. It looks good, brother. According to the well-established creationist theory of Darwin's day, in other words, back when Darwin did this, everybody taught creation, which is true. The exquisite adaptations of many species, such as the hinges of the bivalve shell and the wings and plumes on seeds dispersed by air, were compelling evidence that a designer had created each species for its intended place in the economy of nature. So, again, they're using the word species. Be careful. Here's how they're going to lie to you. Darwin had wholeheartedly accepted this theory, which was bolstered by the biblical account in Genesis, until his experiences in the Galapagos Islands began to undermine this way of thinking about the biological world, from Smithsonian Magazine. This is tricky now. They're switching from the word species to obvious biblical term of kind. They're still the same kind. Here's what really happened. Charlie Darwin set sail on board the Beagle at age 22. The Beagle was the name of the ship, HMS, His Majesty's ship. Is that what it stands for? HMS? His Majesty's, Her Majesty's ship or something. Anyway, in 1831. He couldn't get a job after graduating from Bible college. Nobody wanted him, so he was a dud at everything he did. And so his dad pulled a few strings. His dad was a doctor and said, "Would you please take my son for this trip for 5 years and feed him?" So they took him around for 5 years, didn't pay him anything, but they fed him, which is, you got something out of the deal, and a place to sleep on board the ship. He was the ship's captain's companion. Because in those days, the captain was not supposed to talk to the crew except to give them orders. No buddy-buddy stuff. So the captain would get kind of lonely on the ship, and they would send somebody with him just to talk to, play chess with, or whatever. So Darwin was the ship's captain's companion, the unpaid position. Now, they'll always call him the ship's naturalist. I don't think that's quite correct, but he was a Reverend Darwin on this ship. He's age 22 years old. He brought his Bible with him, and he also brought Charles Lyell's new book, Principles of Geology, had just been published the year before, 1830. It's on the shelf right behind you, Lady Day. Reverend Henslow had given this book to Darwin and told him, "Do not believe it." But Darwin took it with, and you're on the boat for 5 years, plenty of time to read, and so he read the book. That book changed his life and millions more forever. This book, Principles of Geology, where they made up the stupid geologic column, Darwin later wrote a letter to Russell. He said, "Disbelief crept over me at a very slow rate, but at last complete. The rate was so slow I felt no distress, and have never since doubted, even for a single second, that my conclusion was correct." So he began to doubt the Bible. "I can indeed hardly see how anyone ought to wish Christianity to be true, for if so, the plain language of the text seems to show that men who do not believe, and this would include my father, brother, and almost all my best friends, would be everlastingly punished. This is a damnable doctrine." So Darwin wrote to Wallace and said, "If that Bible's true, the unbelievers are going to be punished forever. That's awful. I don't believe that anymore." He lost his faith. And there's a story going around that the nurse heard him repent at the end of his life and got back with God. Apparently the story was made up. It's not true. I don't know, 100 years ago. But anyway, Darwin did dedicate his second edition of his book. It went through 6 editions. Darwin's second edition was dedicated to Charles Lyell, who wrote the Principles of Geology. He said, "The second edition is dedicated with grateful pleasure as an acknowledgement that the chief part of whatever scientific merit this journal and other works of the author may possess has been derived from studying the well-known and admirable principles of geology." Darwin sailed around the world on the HMS Beagle. They stopped off at these islands right there off the coast of South America called the Galapagos Islands. There on those islands, they stayed there for quite a while, he noticed there were 14 varieties of finches. It's a little bitty bird, a finch. Some had a fat beak, some had a skinny beak. Darwin shot hundreds of birds. He loved to shoot birds because he loved worms, and he thought it was mean for the bird to eat the worm, so he shot a bunch of birds, shot all the birds he could find. And he collected them. He dried them out and collected them. He compared the beaks of all these finches on these different islands. He said, you know, I think all these finches had a common ancestor. I bet you're right, Charlie. Let me guess. It was a tomato. Eukaryote. Now, the Grants went down there, probably with a government grant, I don't know, but they spent quite a few years down there, from 1976 up to, 85, studying the beaks of the finches, catching the finch and measuring their beak. They found out during dry years, the beak got a little thicker, and during wet years, a little thinner. But it averaged over a norm. Now, these lines looks really impressive, like, wow, look at the variation. Each line represents 1/10 of a millimeter. 1/10 of a millimeter. That's not much thickness in the beak, but that's what they measured. Okay. Somebody they cut down a tree to publish this kind of stuff. Okay. So Darwin studied these birds and said they had a common ancestor, which was a bird. I would agree, Charlie. They're all a finch. Same kind of animal. Now, they might classify them as different species. Okay, still the same kind. Somebody did a big article here a couple months ago about they've just got a new species, a 15th one now they've discovered on the Galapagos Islands. I said, what is it? They said, it's a finch. Yeah, but it's a new species of finch. Oh, okay. It's still a bird, guys. It's a bird. Anyway, then Darwin said in his book, which is here, or I think it's over there. Anyway, Darwin said, it's a truly wonderful fact that all animals and all plants throughout all time and space should be related to each other. Now, hold on, Charlie, just a second. You saw 14 kinds of birds, and that made you think birds and bananas and worms and tomatoes and whales are all related? Is that what he's saying? I'm not making this up, am I? He's saying all animals and all plants are related to each other. You deduce this from seeing 14 varieties of beaks? Yeah. See, what Darwin saw is what is commonly called microevolution. I don't like that word. I think it's a terrible word. It probably shouldn't be used, but they use it, so I'm going to use it and explain it. It means there are variations within the same kind. Not species. Even in the species, there's variations. But within the same kind of animal, like dogs produce a variety of dogs and roses produce a variety of roses. I think there are now 800 varieties of roses, which might have had a common ancestor. Guess what it was?
A rose.
A rose. You got it. How old are you? 9. He can figure it out. Okay. It was a rose. Okay. We got college professors can't figure it out. Okay. Good job. So Charlie observed microevolution. We should just call that variation. Calling it microevolution gives it what's called the free rider effect. They'll say, well, you believe in part of evolution. Why not go ahead and believe the rest? That's what they're going to do to you kids in school. Watch it. So microevolution, if you want to call it that, or variations, is a fact. It happens. You might get a big dog or a little dog, but you're going to get a dog every single time. There are simply no exceptions to this. The dog, the wolf, and the coyote probably had a common ancestor. We've done this one before. Your son turned 6, didn't he? Hey, pay attention here, son. Watch this. We have a dog, a wolf, a coyote, and a banana. Which one is different than the rest of them?
The banana.
The banana, 6 years old. College professors, pay attention. Focus. He can get it. You can too if you work at it, okay? See, they're the same kind of animal, dog, wolf, coyote. National Pornographic ran an article about the wolf and the dog being related. I would agree. It's the same kind of animal. The Bible said they'll bring forth after their kind. God said that 10 times in the first chapter. I think he's trying to get a message across of some kind, like kind. See, the word evolution has 6 different meanings, and they get angry when I say this, but I've said this for years in my seminars, and since we're redoing part 4, Lies in the Textbooks, we're going to add it again. And you can get angry again and text me all kinds of texts with all your fake accounts at the bottom of the YouTube channel. Okay. But this is a fact. The word evolution has 6 meanings, 6 levels or stages. First would have to be cosmic evolution. Something has to be there to evolve, like time, space, matter. Where did that come from? That's their first step they've got to get over, so they made up the Big Bang Theory, which we covered earlier, which is dumb. Okay. Secondly, you're going to have chemical evolution. Because if your Big Bang made hydrogen and helium and maybe deuterium or lithium, how do you get all these other elements? You got 92 naturally occurring elements. You telling me you can make gold, silver, and platinum from hydrogen gas or helium gas? I want to see how that's done. We're going to do that here for a science experiment. Yeah. Okay. Get a tank of helium and turn it into gold. I want to watch that. Now, see, they'll say, well, fusion happens in stars. Well, now you got a problem because you can't fuse past iron, number one. Secondly, you got to have stars out there. Stars to produce the pressure to change this. Okay, they got to have stellar evolution. Nobody's ever seen a star form. Never. But there's enough stars out there that everybody on Earth can own 11 trillion to yourself. Did you guys go up last night on the sand dunes and watch the stars? Yeah. Isn't that phenomenal? Like, wow. We'll do that again tonight, maybe. Okay, so everybody could own 11 trillion stars to yourself. That'll be cool. Fourth, you have to have what's called organic evolution, the origin of life. They don't like talking about that, but that is part of your theory. Then you have to have macroevolution, changing from one kind of animal to another. That's never been seen. Never. Last is what's called microevolution. These first five are purely religious. You have to believe that they happened. And they do believe it. They believe it very strongly. But it's a religion, it's not a science. Only number 6 is actually science. See, a religion is a belief in and reverence for a supernatural power or powers regarded as the creator and governor of the universe. What created the universe? A process that Darwin discovered called evolution. This is their religion. A set of personal or institutional system, like the public schools, grounded in such belief and worship. Don't they teach that theory in all the schools? Take a look in the books. We could look up the word religion yourself. Okay. They're going to tell the kids in school that evolution means a change over time. Now, hold on a minute. This is sneaky what they're doing here. We all agree things change over time. Kids can agree with that. Then they say, in other words, living things have changed over time. Oh, hold on a minute. You want to start with living things? What happened to the first 4 stages of evolution? What happened to, cosmic, chemical, stellar, organic? They want to start with living things. Okay. Then they go to macro and micro. So they want to skip over the first 4 because they're embarrassed by it. They should be. There's no scientific evidence for it. Now they tell the kids on the next page, evolution can be defined as a change in species over time. Oh, now hold on a minute. Change in species over time. Students are given one definition of the word and then made to believe that it goes beyond that. This defines microevolution. It happens. Species change over time within limits. Big dogs, little dogs, but they're always within limits of some kind. So this is lie number 17. That's not really what they mean by the word evolution. They're going to trick you. They're going to give you 1,000 examples of microevolution and make you believe in macroevolution. It's a magician's trick. Watch this, boys and girls. Now you better watch the other hand. The magicians know how to watch the other magicians, but the average person doesn't. And the average student doesn't know how to pick out the lies in the textbook. Most evolutionists will tell you that macroevolution is just micro with longer periods of time. We covered that earlier. Adding time doesn't help. Adding time is destructive to your theory. It's not going to help anyway. So there's an evolution theory under fire by Roger Lewin, who believes in evolution, back in 1980. He said the central question of the Chicago conference, they had a big conference about this, was to determine, or was whether mechanisms underlying microevolution can be extrapolated to explain the phenomena of macro. Can micro explain macro? The answer can be given as a clear no. Microevolution does not lead to anything else. So I looked at evolution.berkeley.edu today. What is macroevolution? This is from the website today, May the 15th, 2018. Macroevolution generally refers to evolution above the species level. So instead of focusing on an individual beetle species, a macroevolutionary lens might require that we zoom out on the tree of life to assess the diversity of the entire beetle clade and its position on the tree. Macroevolution encompasses the grandest trends and transformations in evolution. Boy, it's a grand theory, boys and girls. Bugs are related to elephants. Whoa, what a grand theory. Your great-great-great-great-grandpa was a microbe. Wow, what a grand theory. That's what they think, okay? Such as the origin of mammals and the radiation of flowering plants. Macroevolutionary patterns are generally what we see when we look at the large-scale history of life. No, you don't see it either. You're lying. Watch this. Next sentence says, it is not necessarily easy to see macroevolutionary history. There are no first-hand accounts to be read. Instead, we reconstruct the history of life. In other words, they make up the story, using all available evidence. Geology. What would that mean? The way the fossils are found in the rocks, fossils don't give any evidence for evolution. They can't. They're dead. You can't prove they had any children. Using fossils, using living organisms. You mean we can compare animals alive today and determine evolutionary history? That's what they think. Once we figured out what evolutionary events have taken place, we try to figure out how they happened. Just as in microevolution, basic evolutionary mechanisms like mutation, migration, genetic drift, and natural selection are at work and can help explain many large-scale patterns in the history of life. The basic evolutionary mechanisms, mutation, migration, genetic drift, and natural selection, can produce major evolutionary changes if given what? Enough time. This is their God, given enough time. A process like mutation might seem too small scale to influence a pattern as amazing as the beetle radiation, or as large as the difference between dogs and pine trees, but it's not. So berkeley.edu teaches that pine trees and birds are related, because all it takes is time. Now, we have some pine trees on our property, right? Like a bunch of them, like thousands of them. It's easy to see the similarity between dogs and pine trees. They both have bark. Hello? Think about it, okay?
They both shed, too.
They both shed. There we go. Okay. Life on Earth has been accumulating mutations and passing them through the filter of natural selection for 3.8 billion years. There's their God right there, time. Time can do it. More than enough time for evolutionary processes to produce its grand history. This is from berkeley.edu today, okay? Is macro just micro with more time? No, this is dreaming. No one has ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. You have to imagine that it happened long ago and far away. It is SpongeBob stuff. Just imagine, okay? This is religion. It is not science. There are genetic barriers to prevent it from happening. Somebody called me today and said, why don't they crossbreed apes and humans if they're the same kind? I said, Stalin actually tried that. Did you know that? Stalin wanted to get a race of super warriors, so he tried crossbreeding apes and humans. I won't go into any more detail, but just to tell you it didn't work, okay? Read up on that, okay? Who would the partly evolved dog marry if evolution was working? One of them got partly evolved, okay, now what? You got to have two of the opposite sex in the same place at the same time in history, and they got to find each other and be interested. You got a lot of problems, okay? And then the rest of them have to die. That's the unseen message. Variations happen, but they have limits. They will never admit this. Farmers breed for bigger pigs. They will never get a pig as big as Texas. I'd be willing to guarantee that. The roaches become resistant to pesticides after a while. It's still a roach, but there are limits. They will never become resistant to a sledgehammer, I promise you. Never. You're not ever going to get a roach resistant to a sledgehammer. Variations happen. There's a lot of varieties of tigers, okay? They produce the same kind of animal. They're still a tiger. That's not evolution. The information for that variation had to already be in the gene code. No new information was added. The dogs don't become pink or learn to fly. That would be new information. Getting long hair or short hair dog is a variation of a dog and a variation of a hare, but it's not something new. They already had hair. You can turn the dogs loose in Alaska and they end up, all of them, with long hair. Guess what? Because they need it to survive up there. Or in the desert where they get short hair. You're not creating anything. You're selecting a slice of the already existing gene code. No new they don't get an air conditioner. There's no new information. The gene pool of the new variety is always more limited than it was before, and it's less able to adapt to future changes. They worked and worked and worked to get a slice of the gene code for tiny dogs and got a Chihuahua. All that energy wasted on producing a useless mutt. How long would the Chihuahuas last in the real world? Turn them loose into the woods and watch what happens. I'm surprised a hawk hasn't come picked up your dog, brother, running around here.
You've had to save her a couple times when she was running out there.
Yeah. The guy who painted the earth today told me that they had kittens. And they had a hawk come down right in front of the family, picked up 2 kittens and took off with them. One with each claw. Bam, took off. Just, whoa, what was that? Okay. Genetic information is lost, not added when you get a variety. You may get develop corn that is sweeter than normal, but something else will go wrong with it. You watch. You got to babysit it now. You got to spray the field and protect it from predators. Something will go wrong. Real evolution would require an increase in genetic complexity, i.e. new information. Show me an example of that, guys. Any examples? I come from Illinois, corn country. There are so many kinds of corn, they have to number them. You drive down the highway and there's, BX65. Don't mix it with XL47. Something will explode. Okay, but it's still corn. You can get bigger corn, sweeter corn, tougher corn, corn that stands the heat better. I don't know how many varieties of corn. There are hundreds of varieties of corn, but it's still corn. You never get a whale or a tomato or a hamster to grow on your corn stalk. That would be new information. There are 339 recognized breeds of dogs who probably had a common ancestor called a dog. Here's BBC News. It looks like 95% of the current dogs come from just 3 original founding females. Wow. Did you know all the dogs could be traced back to just 3? Guess what the ancestor of all the dogs was? Anybody want to guess? Meow. A cat. See, cats have retractable claws. Dogs don't. That's quite a difference. I mean, just that. I mean, think about it. All the muscles required to do that. Anyway, dogs today come in all shapes and sizes, but scientists believe they evolved from just a handful of wolves tamed by humans living in or near China less than 15,000 years ago. Wow, they're getting close. Getting close. Keep studying, okay? This Irish textbook calls it divergent evolution. Don't give it a fancy name. It's still a dog. They're saying the Dalmatian and all these dogs came from a common ancestor. Yeah. It's got 4 legs, a tail. It's a dog kind. Same kind. On the opposite sides of Grand Canyon, they've been separated by the Colorado River. The squirrels have developed very differently over the last 4,000 years. And now we have 2 different squirrels called the Kaibab squirrel and the Abert squirrel. They probably had a common ancestor a long time ago, got separated, and now they've developed for whatever their climate requires. And they have changed. But they're both obviously a squirrel. Okay? I don't know how many varieties of squirrels there are, but I would like a stuffed one of every color for our science center. Wouldn't that be cool? Have you been to New York and seen the black ones up there by Niagara Falls? Black squirrels. It's the coolest thing all around Niagara Falls. I'd like a black squirrel stuffed for our museum. We got squirrels running around here. The cat always trying to get them. Trump is out there stalking them. I got nothing else to do. I feed him so he can sit around. We talk about a welfare cat. Anyway, the horses probably had a common ancestor with something that looked like this. Horses and zebras and mules and burros. It was 4-wheel drive, leather upholstery, 2 ears that are movable. Can you move your ears like a horse does? They're miniature horses, little bitty ones. We had one of the world's smallest horses visit us in Pensacola, 17 inches tall, I think, little bitty horse. My granddaughter, who's now 16, there she was trying to ride the horse. Yes, horses, zebras, asses can all be crossbred. They're the same kind of animal. They get zorses, zonkies, zeonies, zedonks, zebras, and shebras. They can crossbreed them. Now, oftentimes, the offspring is sterile. But still, they did breed and produce a baby. So they're probably the same kind, called a horse. Stripeless zebra baffles the experts. An all-white zebra discovered in Kenya, Africa. Wildlife experts don't know why it's got no stripes. Guys, he forgot to put his PJs on. It's simple. Very simple, okay? The Shetland Zony is the result of breeding a female Shetland pony to a male zebra. The 2 above show how the physical characteristics can differ among the same cross hybrid. So both of these are the result of a female Shetland pony and a zebra male. But they look very different, don't they? Yeah. They're still in the horse kind. Is it a zonkey or a debra? Yeah, I don't know, but the same kind of animal. This is where the evolutionists go nuts. There are lots of varieties. Here's a herd of zebroids running around. Okay? Yes, they can crossbreed. In the last 100 years, they have been trying to get faster horses for the Kentucky Derby. Jeff, didn't you live in Kentucky for a while?
Yes, I did.
How much money would you guess has been spent on the Kentucky Derby and all the people trying to get a faster horse to win that thing?
Oh, billions.
Billions of dollars, okay? Now, in all that 100 years, with all that billions of dollars of trying deliberately to get a faster horse, and then they babysit them, they treat them like royalty. These are not in the woods, okay? These are fed every morning and groomed and, clean their toenails and all that stuff. They've gone from 127-second winning speed to 123 seconds. In 100 years of billions of dollars, they've shaved off 4 seconds. But if you look, even in the old days, they got some pretty good times back then, too. Once in a while, there'd be one that would just really run. Okay? Look, guys, if you really want to win the Kentucky Derby, let me give you a secret here. Breed wings on the horse so it can fly around the track. Yeah. I bet you could fly around the track in 15 seconds. Flat. Yeah. Why don't you do that? See, that would be new information. They don't want to do that. There's a variety of cats in the world. I don't know how many cats Noah had on the ark, but it was a cat. And a 6-year-old would tell you it's a cat. Here they crossbreed lions and leopards and get a leopon. Well, they must be the same kind. Here's a tigon and a liger. They can crossbreed them, and that doesn't normally happen in nature, but it could, because they both come from the same kind called cat. I don't know how many varieties of cows there are. Hundreds of varieties of cows. Some can stand the heat better. Some can stand the cold better. Some give more milk. Some have better beef. Some have richer cream content in the milk. Still a cow. They crossbreed a bison bull and a domestic beefalo cow and get a beefalo-buffalo cross. Wow, big deal, okay? 3/4 American buffalo. They must be the same kind of animal then. Here they crossbred a sheep and a goat and got a geep. A geek? No, geep, okay. A geep. They must be the same kind. A whalpin is a result of a whale and a dolphin crossing, the false killer whale. Must be the same biblical kind. Here's a cross between a camel and a llama. They get a cama. Okay, maybe they're the same biblical kind. Here's a jaglion, jaguar and lion cross. How about bobcat lynx cross? Okay, maybe the bobcat and the lynx are the same kind, called in the, cat family. There are hundreds of varieties of chickens. Here's a magazine where you can order them. What kind of chickens do you want? Do you want red rocks, white rocks, cherry eggers, brown leghorns? Remember the old cartoon foghorn leghorn?
Well, I said.
What did he say?
Well, I said.
Yeah, and then that little bitty hawk was trying to get him all the time, the huge old chicken. He said, man, I ain't no chicken. A chicken. That was hilarious. But, yeah. Hey, boy, what you trying to do? That was great. We got to watch some of those. We should get some and watch them for staff time here. Remember the good old days. They might have had a common ancestor called a chicken. That's what this magazine says. Jungle fowl are the original bird from which all varieties and strains of domesticated chickens are derived. All the chickens had a common ancestor called a chicken. Okay? 8 varieties of bears. This displays up out here in the Science Center now, if you want to see that. They might have had a common ancestor. Somebody shot a Pisley bear, cross between a polar bear and a grizzly. See, that proves we all came from tomatoes. I mean, anybody can't see that. Nuts, okay? Look at this. Kent State University, boys and girls. See this right here? See all these fish? That's proof for evolution. Some have bigger fins. Some have longer tails. Wow. Proof of... It's a variety of the same kind. Do you know some people have blonde hair, some have brown hair, some have red hair, some have no hair? That's proof of something to somebody somewhere. This biology textbook says the broccoli, the cauliflower, the cabbage all had a common ancestor. I agree, it was a plant. And most of these kind have been selectively bred for some, more seeds, more whatever. Farmers do that kind of stuff. Here in California, Yuba City. Nick, how far are you from Yuba City when you're out there? That's in the Central Valley, isn't it?
Yeah.
They put English walnut trees on black walnut stumps. Acres and acres of them. Why? Well, the English walnut tastes better, but the root system doesn't do too well, and it rots and the tree dies after a few years. But the black walnut, they're tough as nails. But the nuts are too tough to crack. So then people don't want to buy black walnuts, they want English walnuts, so they cross them and get English walnuts growing on black walnut stump. They get the best of both worlds. They do acres of it, miles of it like that. Well, they must be the same biblical kind. Look, guys, if you want to really show me evolution, why don't you breed a walnut tree on the back of a turtle or something, a totally different kind. During World War II, they wanted to get more sugar out of sugar beets for the soldiers because they couldn't grow enough domesticated sugar cane. So they took sugar beets and started selectively breeding sugar beets for higher sugar content. Two things happened. They went from 6% to 17% sugar. They couldn't get any further. And the more they got away from the norm sugar beet, the more problems they had. Now you got to babysit the field. Every bug in the world wants to go infect that thing. It was less disease resistant. So they gained in sugar content and lost everywhere else. That always happens. They bring forth after their kind. Did the moose, elk, and caribou have a common ancestor, and reindeer? Maybe. I don't know. Still the same kind of animal. That would be an interesting field of research for biology. But they're going to look at this and think that, wow, this proves moose and tomatoes are related. You can't help stupid. You just can't help it. I don't know what to do with it. I suspect these three right here come from the same original ancestor. Just my theory. Or maybe there was 4 of them on the ark, or 6 of them. I should have brought this in. We got this display in our science center, right, Robert? The hickory and the pecan.
Yeah, we're putting it together.
Yeah, the dentist in Evergreen does this. He crossbreeds them, hickory and pecan, and gets hicans. This one's 50% pecan and 50% hickory. He gets 25%, 50%. The Bixby Hican nut. I got some right here. What am I doing? Oop. They've been on the floor for a while. I keep kicking them when I'm doing my program. I've got to put them up on the shelf. But yeah, they can crossbreed the hickory and the pecan because they're both from the same kind of plant called a tree. Called a tree that produces nuts. This is the shellbark hickory and one mockernut hickory from dentist Dr. Cartwright. Call him up. There's his phone number in Evergreen. You went to him. Dr. Cartwright, if you need a dentist, a good friend of mine. So the Bible says they bring forth after their kind. The phylogenetic tree or evolutionary tree is a branching diagram or tree showing the inferred evolutionary relationships among various biological species or other entities. Their phylogeny based upon similarities and differences in their physical or genetic characteristics from Wikipedia. Really, they're telling us that the animals and the plants are related. They drew a line between it. I mean, what more could you want? If you've got a line, that proves they're related right there. Not only that, the animals, the fungi, and the plants are all related to everything else. All the bacteria are related to the elephants. Anybody can see the similarity. See, this is science right about here. The 4 different kinds of elephants that have existed on the planet: mastodon, mammoth, African elephant, Asian elephant. Asian elephant has small ears. African elephant has big ears. Just think it looks like Africa, okay? Mammoth and mastodon was the different shape of their teeth. Mammoth from mammary gland, the rounded teeth. And mastodon was straighter, flatter. We got a mastodon tooth out here, I think, okay? This is religion down here. It's true, there are 4 different varieties of elephants that have lived on the planet, and they probably had a common ancestor called an elephant or something similar. 1,100 species of bats have been identified. That's a bat the size of a bumblebee. It's called the bumblebee bat, I think. That's pretty cool. We got to get some around here. And I like that big one too. That's pretty cool. He would pick up your dog and run off with it, wouldn't he? Yeah. Leopards. How many different kinds of leopards are there? I don't know. Quite a few. They might have had a common ancestor called a leopard or something like that. Now, I don't know how many cats Noah took on the ark. That would be a good field of research. Could he have taken 20 cats on the ark, 10 different kinds, and produced all the cats today? Probably. I wouldn't say it was 2 cats that made all the cats. Maybe the lions and the domesticated cat are too different to come from a common ancestor. But that's not proof we're related to corn. There's all kinds of cats. How about that? That's a cool looking lion. They can crossbreed. They're probably the same kind. They hybrid the big cats. Here's the kind of stuff they get. You cross a lion and a tiger and you get a liger. You can get a liger, a tigon, a lilygon, a liger, a liard. Yeah, they'll crossbreed because they're all a cat, fellas. There are 60 species of oak trees native to the United States. We got 4 or 5 species on their property right here. They might have had a common ancestor. Guess what it was? A whale. Crawled up on land, started growing right there in the dirt. You just can't help stupid. I'm sorry. Okay, here they show All the creatures of the world, all of them go to a common ancestor. Hey, they drew lines on paper. That proves something. It proves they got a pencil and a ruler to draw a straight line. Yeah. See, outside the circle is science. Inside the circle is religion. Hutton wrote his book in 1795. People started doubting the earth is 6,000 years old. Charles Lyell wrote that book about the geologic column, and people started doubting the flood. And Darwin made people doubt the Creator himself. And I cover video number 5, The Dangers of Evolution. That's the one when they raided our place with a SWAT team. They said, get every DVD number 5 you can find. They didn't get the master. But, yeah, that's the one they hate, because I show how this leads to communism, socialism, the New World Order, how it all ties in with the Masonic Lodge. It's a bunch of stuff on that one. You might better not watch that one. Okay. It's on drdino.com. Okay. In Darwin's day, many Christians taught a false doctrine called fixity of the species. In other words, if there's 8 kinds of bears, then God made 8 kinds of bears. Some people were teaching there's no variations allowed within the kind. Well, that's stupid. That's not true. Darwin properly rejected this false doctrine, but went way beyond reason in his conclusions. Darwin did not think up the evolutionary idea, kids. They're going to tell you Darwin did it. No, he did not. He just made it popular again. Back in the 6th century before Christ, and by the way, BC means before Christ, not before the Common Era. Anaximander, he said, the world and countless other worlds were boundless and will be absorbed back into it. It all just keeps evolving, keeps going around. He said life began growing in ancient slime and over time gave rise to all the species known in his day. Darwin didn't make this up. This was a theory made up by Satan, but taught in 6th century BC. The first living creatures came into being in water, and that in time these creatures crawled onto dry land and adapted themselves to their new surroundings. Anaximander said, man came into being from an animal other than himself, namely the fish, which in earlier times he resembled. Yep, I've seen some people look kind of fishy. I've met them. In the 5th century, Empedocles, I don't know how to pronounce his name, and I don't care, elaborated on Anaximander's theory. He speculated that at one time many different and varied species have existed. Some of these, he held, were ill-adapted to survive. Oh, didn't Darwin follow that same teaching? They couldn't survive. They're inferior, so they died. Ha, ha, ha. We made it. We're better. Yeah. Think about social implications of that. Some of these, he held, were ill-adapted to survive in the harsh conditions of their surroundings, so they died out, and stronger, more adaptable species took their place. This is Hitler 101. The strongest race ought to survive. We got to kill off the weaker ones. Empedocles speculated once many varied species existed and died, and stronger species took their place. This has been taught for thousands of years, way before Darwin came along. So kids, it's a lie. Darwin did not make up the evolution theory. It's resurrected. The Egyptians taught something like that 1000 BC. The Greeks taught it in 600 BC. You're being lied to. And evolution is not just a change in species over time. They're lying to you. That's not really what they mean. They mean the whole theory. But this business of the earth being millions of years old, and uniformitarianism, slow, gradual changes, and godless evolution still saturates our textbooks to this day. Paul said, Timothy, be careful about science that is falsely so called. Let me advise all the young Timothys out there, and whether your name's Timothy or not, be careful about what you learn in school. They may teach you that your grandpa was a rock, and there are no moral absolutes. I had an atheist tell me that one time. He said, there are no moral absolutes. I said, are you absolutely sure? I blew his little mind. He said, that's not fair. I said, that's perfectly fair, sir. That's a real fair question. How can you be absolutely sure there are no absolutes? Think about that for 5 minutes. Hitler said, you let me control the textbooks, I'll control the state. All right, 2 more lies tomorrow night, maybe 3. We'll get as far as we can. Push like, thumbs up, tell others about our channel. Sure. I forgot to give the number. It's almost 82,000. It probably crossed over 82,000. Yeah. Yay. We want to reach the whole planet. So tell everybody else, subscribe and listen in. If you disagree, tough. We're right. No, don't go away. Keep watching. You have some more views. I mean, you're helping to support our ministry. And those of you that got 20 different accounts, keep clicking, keep clicking. Keep clicking. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Bye.